Hello, all. The Irrational Skeptic here, and today I'm going to be going over another type in my Naruto MBTI Typing Series, and I'm going to be covering Team Guy because I'm done with Team 7. If you haven't seen those, you can go back and watch the other episodes that I've done on Kakashi and his crew. But now it's time for Team Guy. Moving on. So I'm going to be starting with Neji, and I believe that Neji is actually an ESTJ in this show. Um, I have particular reasons for believing this, and they more lie in the fact of his. He has a lot of natural skill in the show. He does show that he's very talented, but to an extent, he's very realistic. He's sort of submerged in realism. So if you see him early on in Naruto, sort of the crux of his beliefs are that everyone has a predetermined destiny. So everything that will happen in the future has been determined and no one can do anything about that. It's fixed, that sort of thing. And if you kind of look at that, uh, I've seen other classifications of him as being maybe an ENTJ, but I don't believe an ENTJ really works that way. I think ENTJs work to build their own future, and they don't really believe things are predetermined, though they may believe that things are malleable according to one's ability. So an ENTJ may see someone that doesn't look fit for something, and that's just wasting their time trying to do that. And if they spent their energy elsewhere, they would have better outcomes. But Neji in this show sort of sees everyone as following their own inherent qualities. So you could even call him a determinist. So Neji, from the beginning of the show, his role lies a lot in the fact that he is in charge of protecting Hinata. That is, he's subservient to her. And he carries out his mission very faithfully and not really deviating much from this throughout the show. And I think you will notice that he does have extroverted thinking as a dominant function because throughout the show he tends to talk about empirically derived things that he thinks about a fight or about a situation. And one of those situations is when he was fighting Naruto and he told him that he should just stop trying to be what he's not. And you can sort of see this as a gathering of data using his introverted sensing. Because even before that, he does do a lot of watching and observation of people. And this allows him to build sort of a database, which then he can then go and pick apart with his extroverted thinking to highlight aspects and draw a map of who he thinks you are, basically. ESTJs, even though they're sensors, and sometimes sensors get a bad rap for not having any sort of real predictive ability. I think that's not true at all, but it just shows how they collect information and how they disseminate information as well. So he uses introverted sensing as an auxiliary function to gather data, and he goes ahead and carries out his quite genius plans with extroverted thinking. Going down his functional stack, he would then have extroverted intuition as a tertiary function. So he was actually quite creative as a fighter. He wasn't so sturdy in not being able to change his fighting style or come up with very new ways of defeating an enemy. And so going through his abilities, he has the clan's secret jutsu, which is the dojutsu, called the Byakugan. And this ability allowed him to see around him 360, which allowed him to spot his opponents coming from him from various angles and therefore have very little weak spots. Although we do learn that there is a blind spot to this, but definitely he's able to cover his field of vision very well. And you can make this analogous to an extroverted intuitive, how they're able to see more than one thing at the same time, see different points of views, and using that information, then decide what to do. But I see this as as tertiary function because even though it is a powerful jutsu, it's used more in service of his other ability, which is the 8 trigrams palms of revolving, when he does the whole spinning around thing and punches everybody. That I think that's a more of his unique ability, his unique fighting ability. You could say that the Byakugan is more of a wild card, that he's able to use this in order to perceive the environment, but it really doesn't lend very much into his fighting style. Um, Although you can make the argument that it does, I just think that he has this more as an auxiliary, a tertiary function. And moving on to his inferior function, I think that he has introverted feeling as a inferior function. And this just means that he's not very expressive of his personal values. He says things that he thinks has been empirically derived, not that he just feels that this is how things are, which, of course, if you wanted to contrast that to the person he was protecting, Hinata, you would most likely come to the conclusion that she was introverted feeler dominant, because she always seemed to see him as a little bit of avoiding his feelings, and that was his soft spot, or that was his weakness. He couldn't see that that he was weak because of that in some senses. So yeah, I think those are part of my reasons for him being an ESTJ. Another reason I believe this as well is if you look at the polar functions, this is when you consider the 8 function model, and it ends up being the opposite of the third function is your point of least resistance. So it's things that you don't take into account because you really don't think they're important at all, and you can get blindsided by this. And this point of least resistant function, called the polar function in socionics, is introverted intuition. This means that he doesn't have a lot of clarity into the future, although he does think things are fixed in a way. He doesn't have a clear vision of the future per se. So if you look at NI dominance in the show, such as Sasuke, he has a clear vision of what he's looking at and where he sees he's going. Neji has more of I'm doing my duty and I'm going to stick to my duty, and if I do that, then I'm doing the right thing. And if everyone does their duty and sticks to what they're good at, they're all doing the right thing. So this brings to why he would tell Naruto that, hey, you can't become Hokage because you don't have the qualities to become Hokage. You're not even on the competitive stage to become one. You should just give up. I don't know what you're doing. And yeah, this is a very characteristic of an ESTJ that has studied people very well. Because if you look at even in organizations, ESTJs happen to be some of the higher up individuals because of their ability to study others and make very accurate assessments of others. So if they were a CEO or if they were a manager, they would try to assess their team and know who is ready to be promoted, who couldn't handle promotion, who was kind of slacking, and who really wasn't wanting to work, but they were just there because they needed a job. They would be able to see these things very easily, and they would make their predictions pretty accurately off of this. I mean, people show signs of wanting or not wanting to do something, and an ESTJ is privy to these signals that they get from people. And because of their ability to get in a lot of information, they actually have very good memory, and that works as the auxiliary introverted sensing. So they can gather a lot of information over time and make pretty accurate predictions off of that. So yeah, those are my reasons for my classification of Neji as an ESTJ. If you agree with me, you can let me know down in the comments. If you disagree, let me know down as well in the comments. Well, what type do you think Neji is? Do you have another type that you would give him apart from ENTJ or ISTJ? I think these are the two other possible ones for him. I don't buy ENTJ as much, like I've noted, because I don't really believe he uses introverted intuition. So that counts. If I think it is his polar function, then he obviously can't be using it as a main function, top two. And ISTJ is plausible. It is plausible, but I really don't think he was such the introvert. As a child, he did show the appearance of being quite amiable, and he did perform more activities that look in the realm of extroverted activities until he was given that duty. So I mean, when one is following their duty, they might tend to start withdrawing a little bit and becoming more serious. So he developed very quickly. He had to develop very quickly because he was given such a large responsibility. So if you're given such a large responsibility as such, I wouldn't be so surprised if you changed your outer attitude towards others. And yeah, I really think that this was the main reason for his maybe more shift towards being more quiet and reserved. But yeah, anyways, like I said, let me know down in the comments. That will be it. The Irrational Skeptic signing off.